Happy Wednesday. I'm going to use the word wonderful middle of the week day. And sometimes I don't even know what day it is and what the next day coming up. But I do like to start on time. Here's, well, if people can't hear me, hopefully they put it in a chat. I check and confirm everything before. And because this is such a new process, this is only the 8th time I have used this software. So it's a learning process. So appropriate because tonight we're talking about fear. And it's always good to check in because well, you'll tell me if you can't hear me. All the bars are moving along, so I'm going to presume I'm being heard. So, Diane, if you are on the call, please send your mailing address so I can get out to you some of the lovely things I have set aside for participants. Just send it to support@ellentylercoaching.com. If you forget what it is, just drop me a line in the WhatsApp group. But today is about fear. And I alluded to it yesterday when we were talking about paradigms and subconscious, because our subconscious is really just trying to keep us safe. So I have just a couple areas that I want to read from some of the books that I have, and I wanted to grab the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And it's always interesting. I have the bookmark, which just seems to be the most appropriate page to read. And just to give you a little bit of background information, Dr. Maxwell Maltz was a plastic surgeon who started to discover that when he was operating on individuals, the outcome wasn't always what he expected, because some, and let's just say this, if I had had my nose fixed, that I would still come out and see my nose at the same size as it was. And so it was this first notion that there's pictures that we hold in our mind that no matter what is getting reflected back to us, our subconscious is so strong that it's overriding that. And so this is from his chapter, How to Utilize the Power of Rational Thinking. So I am going to read, I don't have it memorized, but it's the power of deep desire. Rational thought, to be effective in changing belief and behavior, must be accompanied with deep feeling and desire. Just pause. Why on day one we have to understand wanting that goal needs to be the most important part of who you are going forward. Picture to yourself what you would like to be and have, and assume for the moment that such things might be possible. Arouse a deep desire for these things, become enthusiastic about them, dwell on them, and keep going over them in your mind. Your present negative beliefs were formed by thought plus feelings. Generate enough emotion or deep feeling, and your new thoughts and ideas will cancel them out. If you will analyze this, study yourself, you will see that you are using a process you have often used before: worry. The only difference is you change your goals from negative to positive. When you worry, you first of all picture some undesirable future outcome or goal very vividly in your imagination. You use no effort or willpower, but you keep dwelling on that end result. You keep thinking about it, dwelling on it, picturing it to yourself as a possibility. You play with the idea that it might happen. This constant spaced repetition and thinking in terms of possibilities makes the end result appear more and more real to you. After time, appropriate emotions are automatically generated: fear, anxiety, discouragement. All these are appropriate to the undesirable end result you are worrying about. Now change the goal picture and you can easily generate good emotions. Constantly picturing to yourself and dwelling on a desirable end result will also make the possibility seem more real. And again, appropriate emotions of enthusiasm, cheerfulness, encouragement, and happiness will automatically be generated. We become what we think about. Our subconscious has a picture of who it believes we are, and we need to rewrite that program. So I did find the video of Will Smith. Now, it's going to take me a moment because I'm going to come back because there's no mic on for me there. It's going to take me 30 seconds to start it, but I want you to just think about what I just read and enjoy this.
Skydiving is a really interesting confront with fear. I gotta stand up, I gotta stand up. You go out the night before and you take a drink with your friends and somebody says, yeah, we should go skydiving tomorrow. And you go, yeah, we'll go skydiving tomorrow. Yeah, yeah, and you go, yeah. And everybody goes, yeah. And you go home by yourself, you're like, Right? You're like, well, I mean, they was drunk too. So then that night you're laying in your bed and you just keep, and you're terrified. You keep imagining over and over again jumping out of an airplane and you can't figure out why you would do that. So you get there and then you have this safety brief. And you're standing there and the guys will tell you, well, if the chute doesn't open, what's gonna happen is well, why the hell, what could happen? So you get onto the airplane and you're sitting there and you know, it's extra because you're sitting on some dude's lap, some stranger, trying to make small talk. Yeah, man. So you be jumping with people all the time, huh? So you fly and you go up to 14,000 feet and somebody opens the door. And in that moment you realize you've never been in a freaking airplane with the door open. Terror, 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 terror. And then people start going out of the airplane. And the guy walks you up to the end of the thing, and you're standing and your toes are on the edge, and you're looking out down to death. They say, on 3. 1. 2, and he pushes you on 2 because people grab on 3. And you fall out of the airplane, and in 1 second, you realize that it's the most blissful experience of your life. You're flying. There's zero fear. You realize at the point of maximum danger is the point of minimum fear. The lesson for me was, why were you scared in your bed the night before? What do you need that fear for? Everything up to the stepping out, there's actually no reason to be scared. And then in that moment, all of a sudden, where you should be terrified is the most blissful experience of your life. And God placed the best things in life on the other side of fear. That was my experience with skydiving and fear.
All right.
All right.
So practically speaking.
But I didn't like that take. I'm going to do it again. I can sell that better. I can sell it better.
For some reason, I still hear that. So let's stop it. Okay. Now it stopped. I love that video.
If you want to drop this, start more of these. You might think this would take years to learn, but I'm going to teach it to you in 60 seconds.
Stop it. Shut it down. And now it won't. Here's the funniest thing. We're streaming on YouTube. That's a YouTube video. Each time that I play that, there's a little side panel here. I get warning. Warning, warning, warning. It's like it's on your platform. I am not playing anything that I don't have the right to play or somebody wouldn't. But the first time it kind of freaked me out. So we're talking about fear. I find that pretty funny and pretty interesting. I should be able to work through this well under the time that I have allotted. But I do not want to negate the importance of understanding fear has many faces, and it comes across in sometimes it's inaction or procrastination, or we talk ourselves out of doing something before we even try because we've made up a story that the subconscious is confirming. And not that I'm always thrilled that I have stories to share about how the fear and the terror works, because those are strong words. Terror is a strong word. But fear can also be mistaken for what it can look and sound like. Just remember that our subconscious doesn't know the difference between real and imagined, but it knows what's safe because of the loops that we've been playing. So I think I shared that I want to do 10 military style push-ups. I think I also shared that my 88-pound lab, when we were walking, decided he hated the sprinkler in a fraction of a second and upended me on this shoulder. So here is what fear can come out looking as. So years ago, I ended up with some tears in this shoulder. So shoulder tears, all fine now. Perfect story because it was all healed. And then now this shoulder, which apparently the chiropractor said I have whiplash. I can't make up a story or confirm a story that my subconscious believes is true, that I have, let's watch what I say. I'm going to say that this is a fairy tale because I don't want my head to start accepting this. But my story could be why I possibly won't accomplish the goal that I have set for me. Now, it was set to happen in 17 days, 18 days, the end of this month. But the reason we talked about goals and understanding you have to really want this, because challenges and potholes aren't always screaming at you that this is meant to get you to stop. I could make up that story that these are going to preclude me. But I'm changing those new neural pathways about why that paradigm is afraid of that, because it doesn't know any better. And so I just changed the story that I'm, knock on wood, I have really strong bones. That occurrence last week, nothing broke. Nothing broke. I'm pretty healthy. I'm pretty strong. Change the story. I'm going to change the outcome. So it's understanding if we are going after some really big things, and you should all be going after some really big things, that you're going to be asked to do some really uncomfortable action steps. Because if we're not doing uncomfortable action steps, then I'm staying the same. And then I'm staying on that same growth pattern of old Ellen, because old Ellen can't come to the new one. Old Ellen, who had tears in her shoulder, can't come and be the one who can do 10 push-ups. So we should understand we're going to navigate towards fear. I'm going to pull up, I have a great image about this. And then I want to talk about this. So I expanded on, we draw this out with the stick person. Sometimes I just want to see something else behind the stick person. But it's to understand there's really 3 steps that you're going to go through before the event, before the action, or before taking multiple action steps of doing the same thing. And in Bob's world, when he was alive, he worded this really strongly, and he used the XY vibration. And all it was to represent is that when an idea comes in our mind, let's switch over for a moment. When an idea comes into our mind, this is our conscious mind. This is when we're thinking and we're entertaining ideas. So if I'm doing my normal stuff and I'm just thinking in a X vibration, then I'm happily going along. And when we have an idea, oh, I could do 10 push-ups, that starts entertaining a different way of looking at it. So when I pull up the slide, it's to understand we have beliefs. I have beliefs sitting in that side of whether I can do 10 push-ups or not. These are my old paradigms, and these are what I'm comfortable with. Because here's what it looks and sounds like. If I could figure out how to put my little head in there, that's my next project. Because that comfort zone could sound like this. What do you need to do 10 push-ups for? Why is that such an important thing for you to do? You're good enough. You lift weights, you go to boot camp, you do this X, Y, and Z. Why don't you just stop? And why don't you just be okay with doing what you're doing? That's what it sounds like when we start entertaining. Okay, I'll stop switching back and forth. And that's where we really start thinking about the reason, and that's where that conflict comes in. So the first one is just saying, I'm going to stay safe. And then we just really do start thinking, well, what would it feel like to do 10 push-ups? I imagine I would feel pretty darn strong if I could do that. But the paradigm is going to give all those reasons, and that's the voice that I said is in your head. Those 60,000 thoughts a day are not always positive. In fact, research has shown that on average, it's more negative than positive. Now, here is where my opportunity is. Sometimes it's to speak it out loud. Other times it's to put it on a piece of paper. I'll never to be able to do 10 push-ups. Well, is that true? And I get to look at my history and go, no, I've done 10 push-ups before, just like I want to do, so I know it's possible. But I could look to see anybody else. Oh, if you have seen Train with Joan on Instagram, I think she's 77 years old. Maybe she's close to 80. But she is really showing that anything is possible, and you just have to start. So that point that we're wrestling with, we call that the XY vibration, meaning which side is going to win. Because I can go right back to what I'm comfortable with, because the fear of the unknown means I'm stepping out, means no matter what, and having whiplash, you know what I can do? I can do wall push-ups, because that doesn't hurt. I could probably also do counter push-ups. And what happens is that through those tiny action steps, I'm going through what we lovingly referred to as the terror barrier wall. And then I understand I'm creating that new neural pathway that is helping me and my new paradigm understand that no matter what, I am going to take all the actions that are going to get me to where I want to go. fear is a signal of growth. It is not a stop sign. But this is where the most important, I'm smiling because both Bob Proctor and Sandy Gallagher, who I trained under, every time they were talking about something, it was either my favorite or the most important. And I find I do very similar. But what I want you to hear and understand, where we started on Monday with making sure it was a really big, beautiful goal, and then helping you yesterday understand there's an element in your mind that is silently working to, one, keep us safe, but it doesn't know that safe means that I'm not really going to grow while I'm here on earth. And fear comes when we've made a decision that this is the goal that I want, yet I don't know how I'm going to get there. And both faith and fear are invisible. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And fear is also false emotions appearing real. False emotions appearing real. That's something to really grasp and understand what is happening. And this is a really wonderful iteration. So it's a stick person. I put it all on one. So I just want to walk through what this is representing. And it's showing in the stick person format of what really happens in our conscious and subconscious mind and how it shows up. But it's also to ask, where does the pattern show up for you? Where does it show up when you've decided that there's a goal you want to do? Like my push-ups. I'm happy talking about my push-ups because it usually doesn't offend anyone. So, happy to do that. But it does show up. And this is when we want that awareness. And when we're on the side, so we use plus and minus. And on the minus side, we reflect it as to our subconscious when we're hitting that terror barrier. And ignorance just means I don't know. So it creates worry and doubt and anxiety and fear. And when we don't know, and that picture is running rampant, this is also why when we suffer from depression or dis-ease, and we always separate dis-ease, it's because we're in the worry and doubt mode in our subconscious, and it gets bottled up in there, and it has no place to go because it doesn't have an avenue of a new picture and what it looks like. And what we want to move is to the side of knowledge. Now, we want to move to the side of knowledge where we understand that it's implementing. I was talking to my oldest daughter today, she's a great wordsmith, except when it's her words. And this is some work that she wants to do. And she has worked with other coaches. She's doing this work. And one of our other coaches said to her that you know so many things that when her other coach was talking, that Alex could explain it. It said, but the challenge, honey, is that book knowledge doesn't translate to growing in personal growth and development. It's the application and the implementation. And it's why we study every single day, because you're studying you. And this is where faith gets lined up. See, people have this mistaken belief that faith just happens. It's really not that it just happens. It's that we have to understand the background of faith. Yesterday, one of the PDFs that I had, which was linked in the portal, is Napoleon Hill's self-confidence formula. And the reason that we include that I include that, is it's one of the first things that he references about increasing your faith. It was a formula he was actually given by Andrew Carnegie, or Carnegie, however it's pronounced, when he was asked to write the book Think and Grow Rich. And so I wanted to grab this because there is a whole chapter on faith, but it's just understanding there's a difference between faith and belief. Belief comes after faith. See, some people switch it around and think that, well, if I believe, if I see it, then I'll believe it. Well, you have to have faith before you get to see it. But he talks about, this is really like 3 sentences. The method by which one develops faith, where it does not already exist, is extremely difficult to describe. Almost as difficult, in fact, as it would be to describe the color of red to a blind person who has never seen color and has nothing from which to compare what you describe. Faith is a state of mind, which you can develop at will. And he goes on to say, after you've mastered his 13 principles in here, but I'm going to say after you have understood how to study you, because it is a state of mind. Faith and fear are both invisible, which develops through voluntary application and use. Then, to us, the most important sentence is what comes next. Repetition or affirmation of orders to your subconscious mind is the only method of voluntary development of the emotion of faith. Repetition. Repetition, repetition, repetition is how we develop faith. And this is why understanding fear and the terror barrier becomes so important. The paradigm, while it does not know the difference between what is real and what is not, we start our practice of studying ourselves. And when I said that New Year's resolutions on average last 21 days, it's even less for somebody who starts a personal growth study. Especially if we don't understand what is happening underneath and why. It just is going to take time. And time is the one thing we can't answer. There's lots of different components about how, I'm going to use this word, how quickly it can happen, because I'd rather use that word. But when we start questioning about why it isn't here, that is fear coming to the surface, and that is disbelief in that the process works. There's only 2 ways to change our subconscious mind. One is a sudden event, which is typically traumatic, death, divorce, 9/11. The only other way is through constant spaced repetition of an idea over and over and over again. It's how that neural pathway was created when you were a child that we're now tasked with going in and changing. So, understanding the repetitive nature. So I had you do your goal on Monday. You have a goal card. if you I move everything when I'm getting ready for this and I move my goal card. If you read this a couple times a day, but especially when you wake up and right before you're going to sleep. And I shared this, I think, not with everyone, but the best time is to program your mind as you're going to sleep because your subconscious never sleeps. And I promised that I wanted to give you tools to be a different person from Monday to Friday, but I want you to understand how important the repetition is. Over and over and over and over again, giving yourself a command and following it, giving yourself a command and following it. And it simply starts with reading your goal and feeling the emotion and being able to picture what that looks like. The reason only 3% of the population ever achieve their goal is because only 3% have their goal in writing. It's fascinating to me. All sorts of research helps us understand people who achieve their goals write them down and then read them over and over and over again. You know, it's a little bit easy if you have pants pockets, because Bob used to always put it in his jacket pocket. It's why I have many of these in different places. I have one in my car, I have one here, and I have one where I study in the morning. So it's understanding that we have choices, but I'm a science nerd. So I love to back up everything with science. And these were 2 studies. There's always different studies that you can find, but I had said, I think yesterday, that Neville Goddard had mentioned that he was going to leave the science to the people of the future to explain this. And so what we see now is exactly that happening. You know, Bob had studied this for decades, and he studied every single day. But what's fascinating is what Bob studied and what we get to relay is now having science catch up with it. So those that think creating and becoming what we think about, and I'll use the word manifesting, is woo-woo, the science actually confirms that it's not. So the first one, which was really interesting, was a study done, which was the amygdala research. And they were studying one patient in particular. So the amygdala is a tiny shaped, almond shaped spot in your brain that's the primary orchestrator of fear responses. And so in different brain imaging studies, what they found was the amygdala activated specifically in response to fearful stimuli. And the reason this research was important is they discovered and found a patient, this is fascinating, who had damage to both of her amygdalas. We have 2 of them. She had no fear in any situation. Not about snakes. I do not like snakes. Haunted houses, horror films, nothing. She couldn't feel the fear. I find this so fascinating. But what made it not a positive for her, because without fear, she repeatedly walked into dangerous situations because there was no signal telling her to pay attention. Fear isn't a bad thing. Sometimes we need to listen to, maybe don't jump out of an airplane. But fear is not the enemy. It is your navigation system. And that's why I'm a big proponent of put it on paper, and is it real? Do snakes bite? Yes. Do people die from snake bites? Yes. Therefore, I'm not going anywhere near a snake. Could my shoulders create a challenge for me doing push-ups? Not really. It doesn't even matter if it takes me, name a number of months to do it. Is there a real fear about that? Not really. The shoulder's healed, that one will get healed. Get it on paper, because the getting it out of our system is also a way to walk through, is it a real fear? And yes, it is a real fear. I don't like snakes. So the other one, now, I think the inaction haunts more than failure is my favorite, but you'll understand why when I explain this. And actually, it's been studied more than once. So there's been multiple studies in the mid-1990s and then again in 2023. And so what researchers did is that they just asked people what they would change if they could live life over again. And over half of all regrets, so over 50%, were about things that people did not do. They didn't go after the new job. They didn't pursue the career they wanted. They didn't try harder in a new relationship or by taking a chance. And only 12% were regrets of action. Things, I love this, things they did and wish that they had not done. Why is this important? Because regrets of action sort of fade over time. You know, you took a shot, it didn't work out, you learned, you moved on, but regrets of inaction actually increase over time. The what if never goes away, and it never resolves, and it haunts a lot of people. So what it teaches us is that the long-term regrets are overwhelmingly about failures to act, not failures from acting. And the research really just shows that even if people take action, and even if it's something that did not work out for them, experience much less lifetime regret than people who play it safe. Jump. This is exactly what Bob taught about the terror barrier, that when you hit that wall and you bounce back into bondage and back to safety, is the way I like to say it, it doesn't mean you escape the pain. You actually just trade acute fear in the moment for regret that's going to last. And the person who actually pushes through that might get bumped, might get bruised, but the person who bounces back is going to spend the rest of their life wondering, what if I had tried? And that cost isn't money, it's years of what if. It's really why it's one of my favorite studies. And then, when was Steve Harvey? I did not choose another video to play. I may pop it into the email, but I'm a fan of Steve Harvey. And I'm a fan of a lot of people who have a story about where they started and where they came from, and now he wants to be a billionaire, which I think is wonderful. But he tells his audience repeatedly that every successful person he has ever met had to jump at some point. And I love this. He said, you know, we all have a gift that we were given at birth, and that gift is your parachute. But the parachute doesn't open while you're standing on the cliff. It only opens after you jump. And when you jump, it won't open right away. You're going to hit the rocks, you're going to get cuts, and you'll be bleeding. But eventually the parachute has to open. And he just says, you can play it safe and stand on the cliff of life forever, but if we don't jump, our parachute is never going to open. And he's just describing the terror barrier in a different language. That is why I like to go find different examples, because it's all the same thing. The cliff is the wall. The jump is pushing through it. And the parachute is the resources that come to you as you need them. Because when I get to help somebody, it's like, I don't know how it's going to happen, but the resources will appear as you need them. And it's when we begin working toward the new goal that we start to look outside of ourselves for the resources. We don't always find them right away. They come as we need them. So I am a big fan of stories. I'm a big fan of questions. There's questions in your workbook. And I just, again, we don't want you to write them down unless you know. So if my goal was, well, let's use the shoulders, and my fear ended up being that I now have two shoulders that aren't working optimally. I'm going to have to change this all when we're done talking. But we ask you, what's the one biggest fear that keeps you from the goal? Because see, sometimes people have had the same goal. They just haven't hit it because they don't yet understand programmed, need to change it. Repetition will help. And it's just one. So if I was in sales and needed to increase my sales, my biggest fear might be that I'm not great at sales. And so we want you to really think about what are some of the fears that come up and then pick one. Because there's probably going to be a couple. When we do the work tomorrow on the money paradigm, I will need to find that, because I did the exercise and I did it in a spiral notebook and I counted the number of what we're going to work on tomorrow. I think there was 40 some fears. And then we asked the most important question: what's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen with my shoulders? Which I'm now delayed, but it's going to heal. This one healed. I believe in the fact that I have a healthy body. So what's the worst that could happen? It's going to be a little bit longer than I really thought it was. And what's the best that could happen? I'm going to be really strong when I can do 10 push-ups from my toes. And then we ask about, what are you committed to do? It's my subtle way of asking, are there some actions that you could take that are going to move you closer to your goal if you start taking an action? Can I do wall push-ups? Yes. Here's a secret. Have I been doing them since I hurt this last Tuesday? No. Am I committed to do them because I know that it's going to bring me closer to my goal? Yes, I am going to do some wall push-ups. And so I would say spend a little bit of time on that. And here's what you're going to understand. You're going to have more than one. We have lots of paradigms. We have lots of reasons that we think we're not accomplishing what we have said that we really want to accomplish. Don't pick the one that you're least afraid of. In fact, I would pick the one you're most afraid of. So if I wanted to speak from stages, I was talking to a friend today and he's traveling around the country, speaking on pretty big stages. And while he was not fearful, because he loves what he does, he actually does image consulting and helps people understand who they are by the different clothes that they wear. It was fascinating to hear him talk about how he's working through that fear. Because he has some old stories. And you know how I said I love podcasts where It's like, it's the hero's journey. We all love the hero's journey. We love to know that somebody starts here, like Bob, deep in debt, gets up here. But sometimes the repetition of that story isn't helping us. And he was telling the story because he has a belief that successful people had to go through crap to be able to tell the story. And all I said was, hasn't it been long enough? Because he has multiple legs of the journey. Hasn't it been long enough? And who decided how many months or years of not being where you want to be and having, challenges with that? Why can't you just have that be the story and now start telling a new story? And it was like he hadn't thought about that. He thought he had to drag that story with him. And, I said the other day that we can't take our old self with us, because Ellen, who got here, was successful to get here, but she doesn't have the skill set or the capability or the characteristics and the things that need to be done to get to the next level. And so she needs to stay at the door and not come to work with me every day. And I wanted to leave you with one of the affirmations that was shared with me by a gentleman by the name of Doug Dane, who also has a story about what he went through and when he worked with Bob. And now he's helping individuals who had childhood trauma like himself. But this is going to be helpful no matter where you are in the journey when you understand these words. And understand that paradigms don't ever go away. I actually used to tell people, look, we can get them duct tape, but you're going to reach new levels where they're just going to come out again looking different. And it's understanding that that's what's going to happen. And so he wrote down, and I liked it so much I took a screenshot of it. Rather than permitting my paradigm to employ all of my spiritual power to hold me back or keep me where I am, I'm making this committed decision. Regardless of how difficult it may be, for a period of time, my paradigm shift is constant and certain. Rather than permitting my paradigm to employ all of my spiritual power to hold me back or keep me where I am, I'm making this committed decision. Regardless of how difficult it may be for a period of time, my paradigm shift is constant and certain. I think that's a wonderful, affirming statement to program into our subconscious mind as we're going to sleep. Regardless of how difficult it may be for a period of time, my paradigm shift is constant and certain. It's saying in a soothing way that I'm not ever going to give up. I understand there's some things that are uncomfortable that I need to walk through and do if I want to have the goal that I have listed. And I thought it was such a game changer. If I can only have you do a handful of things, it would be read the goal card morning and night a couple times during the day. Find a statement like that and a couple affirming statements. I could be the first millionaire in my family. The universe is always providing opportunity for me to grow and thrive my business, whatever it is. If I can affirm a couple things during the day, affirmation for paradigms, if I could record them and play it as I'm going off to sleep, you will change your life. Now, there's quite a number of other things, but I want you to understand the simplicity of this. We make everything too complicated. Somehow manifesting has gotten just a bum rap lately, because if we don't understand everything that circles it, then we're going to say it doesn't work. Compared to what's going on in my subconscious that's really hindering me from getting to where I want to go. Oh, I might have a belief that I'm not great at sales. Or I have a money ceiling that I didn't really recognize was there. But if I look at, here's a really great way to find your first money ceiling. Look at your income over the last 5 years and look at how it's changed. And for some, it has gone up and down. For some, it just grows consistently. But that is your part of your money paradigm. How you believe that you can grow. And then there's some fear that's going in there. But we are going to uncover all of those thoughts that are rolling around in your head tomorrow with a really simple exercise. When we come forth being honest and humble, and we're just doing the work. So I will walk through the exercise tomorrow. I don't anticipate, well, I'll look to see at the time. We might spend a moment or two of just writing some to give you an idea. Really, I'm going to have to search for where I put mine, because I did keep it because it was just, look, in the work that I get to do, we're not exempt from working on ourselves. In fact, if somebody ever tells you that they're done and they don't need to work with other coaches or mentors, then they really don't understand this, because that's actually some of my criteria. I work with coaches and I'll ask them, who do you work with? Because we're never done. Bob had Michael Beckwith, John Osseroff, a few others, because they were all in the movie The Secret, that were his mentors and accountability partners. So we're not in a Facebook group. We're not really going live on WhatsApp. It's always interesting because today was on fear. I would just say, do something tomorrow that's a little bit uncomfortable. And actually how this just popped in my head, but it's a challenge. And I heard this from actually a strength coach. Brush your teeth, standing on one leg. Brush your teeth, standing on one leg. That's my challenge. The other is with your opposite hand standing on one leg, but that's also. The other one, write your goal with your opposite hand. When Bob was alive, that was a challenge, and he would have us do it for a month. And gosh darn, you want to have the shortest number of words in there because you recognize it is extremely uncomfortable writing with your non-dominant hand. So those are two ways to just start off the day tomorrow, that you're doing something a little bit different, that's not normal, and it's going to put you out of your comfort zone. The reason to write with your non-dominant hand, down the road when somebody has studied this for a bit and is writing their goal out every morning, we get lazy. Lazy only because we're not thinking about it. I'm so happy and grateful, period. Now that I have. But a lot of times they're just writing out the sentence. When you're writing it, my left hand is my non-dominant. When you're writing it with your opposite hand, you have to think about every word and every character in that word, so you can't rush through it. Think of it. I am So then happy is one of those words. It's it's kind of crazy. So that's my ask. Because we're not going to have people go live or go do anything. That's my ask. And I gave you 5 extra minutes today. Come ready to play tomorrow. Come ready to play and understand if there's even a subtle movement in what you believe your income ceiling is, it's a game changer, because it's going to open the door of thinking like the person who earns X compared to the story we've been telling about the last 5 years about how our income is. So enjoy the rest of the night. I really can't wait for tomorrow. It's a favorite because when I worked with Bob, we all have money paradigms, and you're going to have them the rest of your life, because as you move up that ceiling and then you get there and you go, oh, wait a second, let's move that ceiling up a little bit higher. The progressive realization of a goal means we're going to grow. Have an awesome night. I will get this replay. I'm pretty good at that. That's the one thing I have finessed at. It's not that complicated. I'll get it out into your hands. But it really is just start writing out, is it true? Am I afraid of snakes? Yes. Can I do push-ups? Yes. Write it out. We're just looking for false evidence.